But he also said there's normally not very many pads either.
Actually got one out of the pad?
Yep.
Okay. This is probably the size that's been blowing up on the frog.
Yeah. This one's not a small one. That'll work. Skinny though. Skinny. I like it when you pop them with that braid. That one came up and got it like it was just sitting right below the pad.
I wasn't sure, and I sat there, and then it was taking off with it. Yeah, bless. That's in the wrong hole.
Hey everyone, I wanted to go over what baits I used to catch them on in the video today. This was actually a club tournament that we had. I managed to finish second out of it, just barely missed the win, but that's kind of the story of my life in fishing. But as the title shows, I caught them on the Gambler Stinger. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot lately. There it is right there. This one's the black and blue. This isn't actually the color I used. I used the Gold Rush, but I'm out of them now. I'm all out of them. Actually, this is it right here. Ow. Sharp hooks. You kind of call a little bit of a June bug and a PB&J color a little bit. You got a green pumpkin on one side, June bug on the other. Whole lot of glitter in there, so it shines real good in the sun. The lake I was in, you could see the pads, but what you couldn't tell is you probably had about 1.5 to 2 foot of visibility. So, and the sun ended up coming out pretty good. There was a lot of wind. You could probably hear that in the video. I actually think, not to be one that tries to get into colors too much, but I think the glitter on a sunny day, especially in the wave action, really helps it stand apart. When you're in vegetation and stuff like that, really easy to, the glitter really helps it stand out. I was basically just pitching to any open hole I could find in the pads, just any size hole, whether it's the big one or a small hole. I was only using a 1/2 ounce weight because once you got below the pads, you had anywhere from, most of the time, about 2 feet till you got to the bottom, sometimes 6 to 8 feet. It just kind of depended, but most of the time about 2 feet. But there was nothing below the pads other than the root systems and stems themselves, so no milfoil or hydrilla or anything out I had to get through, so I didn't need a heavier weight. So a 1/2 ounce weight, I would peg it. It was on a braid, and that was a 7.5 foot Denali flipping stick. And simple pitch and catch, man. You pitch it out there, get to the bottom. Most of the time you'd pick it up and there'd be one there. Sometimes, just like with typical punching, they'd be suspended right underneath the mat. But I also wanted to go over baits that I like to flip with a lot. I've really turned on to, over the years, I've gradually switched more and more from trying all these different baits, all the beaver style baits, the random punch baits, flipping baits. The brush hog was probably the first flipping bait I ever really remember using. Anymore, all of them I use are made by Gambler. I just really, really like their stuff. The Stinger is my all-time favorite right now. Well, I guess it's not really all-time, but it's turned into my favorite. It's so versatile. You can do so much with it. Obviously, you can flip with it really well. I've used it as a jig trailer. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I used it on a football jig trailer fishing weed lines in 20 feet of water, and it made a jig that looked pretty small without a trailer. It bulked it up really good and started getting me a lot of bites. When I want a lot of action when I'm flipping, I like the Stinger and the Ugly Otter. The Ugly Otter is fairly unique. I've not really seen any other flipping baits out there on the market like it, but it's got a fat, I don't know, one of them sea creatures, a walrus, I don't know, one of those, a manatee, I think. It's got a funny looking tail like that. It's fat, it swims well, it's got like a hard thump. It'll flaps up and down when it's going through the water, but it's got a really, really hard thump, and when you put the right weight on it, it normally, for me, it has to be a fairly, no lighter than a 1/4 ounce. It will thump going through the water, sort of like a Colorado blade would if you were to let it just, free fall. I like them both. The Stinger tends to glide a little more. I think it works better if they're not extra aggressive and you want to let it sit and let the pinchers kind of just move around in the water. I like the Stinger a little better if I feel it's a little subtle, but if they're just munching, they'll go nuts over the Ugly Otter for sure. The other times when it's not, when they're not just munching, what I use the most when I'm truly punching is the Why Not. You see, it's meaty profile. It's just beaver style tails, if you will. There's not a lot going on with this. It goes in and out of cover really well. That's what I use when I'm punching most of the time. I've even put it on stand-up jig heads too, and casted it around and fished it in the place of a shaky head. Got me bites that way, especially when they see a ton of finesse worms come through. That's been a good bait. And then I'll also like to use the Burner Crawl. Still got a little bit of action. It's not too much. When I'm using the Burner Crawl, I've used it punching, and I like it well enough, but I'm able to, on the days I'm catching them on a Burner Crawl, I'm also able to catch them on other stuff. So when I'm actually flipping just the Burner Crawl, a lot of times I'm swimming it as well, because you see it's got the real good pinchers on it. They swim like crazy. I mean, I don't know what this was actually designed to do, but when I first seen it, I'm like, that's for swimming. That's just a great bait for swimming. So I like to swim it real well. Again, I use it as a jig trailer. Works great as a jig trailer. Just like the Why Not, it's got the meaty body, so it holds the hook really well, but it's really soft, so a bait or a hook comes through it well. You don't miss a lot, and it balls up on your hook and all that business. I don't have it with me, but the last thing that I like to use when I'm punching, and the bite is really tough, and the mat is really, really thick. I live in the Midwest. We don't punch deck hydrilla mats or anything like that, so I have no need for a 2.5 ounce weight like guys out in Florida or fishing in Cal Delta and stuff like that do. So if I can't get through a mat with a 1.5 ounce weight, I scale down to a BB Cricket. It's only about a 3 or 3.5 inch little tiny crawfish bait. It's got some pinchers on it. Nothing really moves. It's extremely subtle, but man, it will catch some big ones. So those are the baits I like to use. You guys comment in the video or down in the comment section anything you want. I'll link all this stuff down in the description. And until then, I'll see you guys out on the water.